Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Real Talk with America's Supermom. I'm excited to have my next guest as we were talking briefly before pushing record. It's been some time. She was actually a guest on another connection through LinkedIn that I met. And I loved her conversation, and I just simply took the next step and just reached out. So I am excited to have Laura with me here today. And before we get into a lot of great conversation, I want to give her the opportunity to introduce herself.
Thank you so much. I am so honored to be here today and just excited to have a wonderful chat. Laura Flaskner, I'm an innovation and leadership coach. I'm founder and CEO of Mindtap. And what we do at Mindtap is we help what I call non-traditional leaders, meaning women, minorities, introverts, supporting functions in corporate America, and helping them to be seen as the leaders that they are, because they may have biases working against them. And how I love doing that is helping people lead their own high impact, innovative project. Because I love innovation, and also I love neuroscience. So I have a lot of neuroscience and different things that I use to make sure that what we do is actually effective. So that's me.
I love that. Now, as you're saying that, I'm like, yeah, this is exactly why I reached out to her because I love the whole idea of innovation. So,
Mm.
for many people, we hear that term and, we think we know what it means, but what does that word really mean to you and what you do every day?
Yeah, and I've done innovation for years in corporate America, like over 17 years. I was in innovation.
Mhm.
But what innovation really means to me is the fact that actually we all do innovation every day because it is literally creative problem solving.
Mhm.
It's finding new and better ways to do things. And that solves problems and makes things better for us, for our families, for our workplace, for other people in the world. And so that's what I want to open up are the tools that we know within innovation that actually help increase probability of success.
I love
Um,
that, and that is I mean, you just had me with that because as a mom with 15 children, 10 of them still at home, okay, we innovate every day. If you don't have bread, you use a quesadilla or, I mean, a tortilla shell, to make a sandwich and stuff like that, but people, they don't really feel they have it. You say creativity or innovation, and
yeah,
sometimes the term really, is a bias, because people feel like they're not smart enough or, well versed enough to really kind of implement some new things. So, what is
yes.
it that you think? What advice would you give people who are listening about, creativity, innovation, and things that we need to do to kind of begin to open ourselves up about it?
Absolutely. Well, there's two things that come to mind here. One is a reframe on how we think about innovation and creativity. Um, in essence, really what it is resourcefulness,
Mhm.
right? And we can all be resourceful and finding what we have available to us to be able to use in a new or different way, right? That
Mhm.
essentially is the crux of innovation, is making connections, of using things in a new or different way. And I love like what you said, you don't have bread for peanut butter and jelly, use a tortilla. Oh my gosh, like perfect. You're resourceful, you're using what you have. That's an innovative, creative solution.
Mhm.
And the thing about this on the second thing I share is on the neuroscience side is we all have this capability. It's not that we have it or we don't. What you might have is you use it more often or you don't. And the fact
Mhm.
is, if you don't use it as much, then that literal muscle within your brain is just a little weak. And so
Mhm.
that doesn't mean that you don't have it, though. It means it can be used and strengthened. You can build that up to use in anything, anything that you do.
I love that. And, what comes to mind with you sharing the resourcefulness is, people trusting enough to be honest and vulnerable about their situations.
Yes.
So in the case of the not having the bread, it's like, hey, it is what it is. I tell that to my kids. You use what you got. But, if you're in the workplace and as a woman or minority or introvert or some of these other spaces that you work with, sometimes people feel intimidated, or they have a lot of judgment around admitting what it is they're having a problem with in order to be resourceful. So, what are some ways that we can kind of overcome that hurdle?
Absolutely. Well, you know, some of the things are in the fact of having an idea or a challenge. You probably don't know the answer yet, and that's actually okay. But the most powerful thing that you can do is ask questions, is ignite your curiosity.
Mhm.
And uh, actually, I'd say the most powerful question where you actually get someone to think differently is even more powerful than an answer. Because oftentimes an answer comes from something we've already done or we already tried before. And while it may work, it may not actually be that next level that you're looking for because that came too easy, right? The
Mhm.
innovation comes from thinking differently and connecting new things together that you haven't connected before. And they're simple things. I was actually just reading a book called Range by
Mhm.
David Epstein. And
Mhm.
the idea of the book itself is the fact that you don't have to be an expert to do
Mhm.
anything. If you have range, like, being able just to have a little bit of information across a lot of different things, you can make these connections that no one else can.
Mhm.
And so there's idea of like this problem they had, the engineers of collecting oil from the ocean and the barges that collect it, right, the spilled oil, um,
Mhm.
has this sludge problem because it condenses and it gets really thick and it can't actually move through the system to be collected because it gets the consistency of like peanut butter.
Mm.
So, and the engineers, the chemists, they couldn't figure out like a best way of doing this. They put an open source question out onto the internet, and someone with construction background said, when we pour cement, right, that can happen. It starts to congeal in the chute. And to
Mhm.
keep it flowing, they actually just have this like rod that vibrates and it breaks everything up and pushes it through. And it's the simplest solution, low tech, really low cost, and all the other solutions they're coming up with are like these high tech, really complex systems. But no, like this simple thing, this rod that
Mhm.
vibrates is going to solve the problem. So
Love
it's
that.
really about opening up and thinking and connecting new things together and just really having the conversations and curiosity to ask from people's experience is what opens that up. And by asking questions of what you think to other people, of what they think, that
Mhm.
doesn't put down on you because that was your original question, right? Because you're
Mhm.
worried about not knowing.
Mhm.
Um, when you ask other people what they think and you say, I think your input is valuable, and you really kind of explore, you're building that relationship in a great space because number one, you're complimenting them, right?
Mhm.
They want to talk to you then because they're like, oh, someone actually wants to listen to what I have to say. And don't
Mhm.
we all love that when someone actually wants to listen to us, right?
Yes,
And
absolutely.
right. And then as you have those conversations, you're building those relationships with these people. You're collecting multiple different pieces of perspectives together. And
Mhm.
that's where the magic happens of you as a leader of this innovative idea of like starting to piece these different things together. Right.
I love that. And it just rings to me like a mastermind, and I love the piece about asking the questions because I overcame 13 years of depression and I wasn't asking any questions. I was in this mindless living, trying to be all things to all people and totally get the question. So, my next question is, as someone who works with these different groups? How do you get them to trust? Because I think that's another issue, being able to trust that, you're able to steer them in the right way, because there's a little bit of trepidation around leaving a comfort zone,
Oh, yeah.
and doing something different. And I love that example you said about them putting it out on the internet, but then there's a lot of people, it's like, oh my gosh, what if somebody crazy answers? Or, you want to have control. And so being able to give up some level of control can be scary, So how do you get people to trust?
It's really scary.
Hmm.
Um, and yet that is the crux of innovation is you're dealing with the unknown, you're dealing with the murky. You have this idea of where you want to go, but no clear path to get there because what it hasn't been done yet. So
Hmm.
that plan is not there. So you literally you're learning each step as you go to figure out what's that next step as you go.
Hmm.
Um, and so it is a very much a self awareness journey that
Hmm.
does need to happen in trusting yourself that you're going to know what to do the next step when you get there,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Um, and so as you go through this journey of building your idea, you're actually building trust and confidence in yourself. And so that's the beauty of this process is not only do you grow as you go through it, but
Hmm.
then as you create this new thing, then you make this impact for so many people around you too. And
Hmm.
so many people then benefit as well. Um, and so your question is, how do you get to that trust piece? Well, there's a lot of work that I do with people to be able to go back and trust so they can trust themselves to make some of those steps. But I know this journey. Like I can totally understand the hardness that requires to do this. Um, and I even just posted earlier today um, a post on a story of when I was in Hawaii, and
Hmm.
we went to this beach, and there was a cliff that you could jump off of, and I was like, "Ooh, I kind of want to do that, but I am terrified to do that." And then my 7-year-old starts running up the rock. I'm like, okay, now I have to do it. Like as I'm running after him. Um, but one of the things, like simple and easy, right, that I actually used in this scenario to help push through the fear is when I got to the edge, right? It was scary thinking about it. You get to the edge and you're looking down. Oh my gosh, like this pit in my stomach and the fear crawling at you. Like, don't do it. Um, I wanted to push that away, right? Because I
Hmm.
knew that yes, it was scary, but it was safe when the way I was doing it. I knew it was
Hmm.
safe. So I was like, okay, I need to act confident. Even if I didn't feel it, I need to act confident. And engaging your body actually is a way to rewire and send signals to your brain. And so what I
Hmm.
did is actually I put my hands up and I was like, yes, almost like in a victory, like I've already done it, but I'm about to do this. Like, yes. And I actually did like a whoop, right? Big noise
Hmm.
coming out and that energy coming out both in your hands and your voice said signals to your brain that you're ready, you're excited, and you're going to do this. And
Hmm.
then before my brain could think anymore, I just went.
Love that.
So
I
little tricks to be able to get you going.
I love that because, that is so true. It's the mind chatter, that we have with ourselves. No one even is in the conversation. It's just us.
Well,
So,
it's the conversation between the head and the heart,
mm,
right?
love that.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
the head is over analytical. And analytical is really important in a lot of situations, but
Mhm.
when it goes into overdrive, it will
Mhm.
squash the heart, right? And what you're doing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Love that. Now, so what do you do in your regular routine to kind of keep that equilibrium, that
Mm.
it should have? because, there is the tendency, it's just like your job. You can work, work, work and forget about your family, or do your family, forget about your job. Everyone thinks that there's this balance. And I tell people, they're like, how do you do it with 15 kids? I'm like, that's the thing. There is no balance. It's a harmony, right? It's like a choir. You got different tenors and, sax, sopranos and everybody in the choir, but it's about the harmony.
Mm,
So how do you keep that in equilibrium?
I love that harmony piece of it.
Mhm.
Um, I don't have any amazing analogies like that, but but what I do have is a little bit of a routine. I have
Mm,
3 kids and 3 dogs and 2 businesses, and I lead the mission and outreach at my church.
mhm,
And all my kids are in travel sports. They're all actually in music, do an instrument. Um, and so I had to put into place a system that worked for me to be
mhm,
able to pivot, to be able to move, to be able to keep in mind, keep the main thing, right?
mhm,
As you were saying,
mhm,
with so many things going, you can get so easily distracted into
mhm,
something that's not important.
mhm.
And you don't realize it till later. And then you're like,
Right.
shoot, like, yes. Okay, so the big picture thing of like all my life is a monthly thing. And I do a monthly check-in with myself. I have a little wheel that's broken
Mhm,
into 8 little spokes, and it
mhm,
has all the main pieces of my life that I like to keep in mind and priority. And it's not that I do everything on that wheel every day, right?
mhm,
But it's a monthly check-in, like, how am I doing with my kids? How am I doing with calling my mom? How am I doing
mhm,
with finances? How am I doing with my church? Like all the different pieces, right, that affect me. Um, and my husband, I have to mention him too.
mhm,
Uh, then for my business, right? For my business, what I do is a weekly thing
mhm,
where I list out first, I list out all the
mm,
celebrations from the past week. Because for me, at least, I'm the achiever. I'm the go, 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 go. I'm always focused
mhm,
on the future and the goals I want to hit. And that can get exhausting,
mhm,
especially when you always have something you haven't reached yet. So, in doing the celebrations actually fuels you to like, you are making progress. And there's actually brain science in savoring of being able to say,
mm,
yes, you are doing a good job. Even if you're not there yet, look at how far you've come. Look at these hard things that you did last week that have
mhm,
already moved you forward. And that
mhm,
fuels me for all the next things that I write down of the things I want to go and do. Right.
mhm.
And I love having the big goals there, and I write them down every week to remind
Wow.
myself what are the big things that I'm really reaching, and then go backwards. What are the things that I have to do this month to be able to get
Mhm,
there? What are the things I have to do this week to be able to get there? Here's all
mhm,
the things listed on my to-do list, but really on that to-do list, what are the things that are linked to what will actually move me forward?
mm.
So that's my little process of how I do, like, how do I keep the priority things actually priority?
I love that. And what I'm hearing is people don't realize the work that goes into the focus and discipline and clarity. I was doing an interview one time and someone said that, when you are clear and focused, you can determine if something's a distraction or truly an opportunity. And this is something that a lot of us just don't realize. We get onto this hamster wheel of working and doing all this. I was in a room earlier on Clubhouse with the automotive industry, and they were talking about, ways that they can reframe and think about their end user. They were gave this example about this Ford dealership that was thinking about selling cars more so than the cars being a Ford. So they were doing research and finding out what were some of the cars that were selling and were the most popular in their area. And they started getting those kind of cars. So even though they're a Ford dealership, some of their top sales were with a Toyota Corolla or some other brand of vehicle because they were clear about their mission is to get cars
Yeah.
sold to people, you know. So I love that you broke that down that way.
And I love that because when you know what you need to do, then you can change how you do things and be innovative, right?
Mm,
Because if you don't have that clarity,
mhm,
then you're not going to rethink how you do things, right?
mhm.
Because there's always more than one way to get to the path that you're going.
Love that. Now,
Yeah.
so this is a great conversation. I could go on for hours, but I think my next question is the thing about the questions. I love how you mentioned to follow that curiosity. And so, for a lot of people who I've done a lot of research on the brain, thinking about how we are really into this routine, you know, some people say it's like mindless living. You know, we just get into doing what we always do. We don't even think about it. We miss opportunities. So for someone, and many of us are in that category sometimes, how do we kind of break that cycle and transition? What is a good way for us to kind of get started with building that curiosity?
I love that question because honestly, the majority of our thoughts each day are actually on repeat.
Hmm.
They're a habit of our thoughts. And
Hmm.
if you write them down, you'll realize that you'll have the same thought over a number of days, a number of weeks. And to be able to break out of that um, is to literally give yourself space, right? Space to explore and space to um, think and space to just be a little bit.
Hmm.
Um, the reason is we are like a go, 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 go kind of culture, right?
Hmm.
And with the go, 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 you don't have time for your brain to explore, to ask those questions, to wander, right? And so that's what's required for creativity and for innovation to make those new connections of different spaces in your brain. And so what I like to think is there's two tools that I use to be able to do that. One is space, literal, like literal space, and
Hmm.
two are sparks. So with space, it would be your literal environment. If you want to be exploring, get out from the space that you execute in. So don't sit at your desk. Like literally, even if you're in an apartment, you don't have a lot of space, stand up and like face the window. Um, just that change in perspective of your space can change how your brain starts to think. Okay.
Hmm.
Um, the second one of sparks is have some stimulus to think about. So whether it's listening to a podcast or reading an article or listening to one of these of your podcasts, right? It gets your brain thinking differently with different perspectives. But the trick is to listen and then stop and give space for your brain to process and think about what
Hmm.
you just heard and what you might apply. Instead of a lot of times we'll binge, right? You'll go
Hmm.
from, oh, that was really cool. Let me do another. And you'll keep going, right? That is about consumption, but you're
Hmm.
not using the information. You're not letting your brain actually make use of it to how you would apply what you hear. So
Hmm.
it's being able to have that spark, but then the space to be able to let it connect and do what it needs to do in your brain.
Love that, you know, because I am a bookaholic. So I was over here writing down that book range that you said, right? And you know, I used to read and just be like, "Oh my goodness, that's a good book," and go to the next one. But now it's like having a conversation. I have my notepad out. I'm thinking about how I can apply this. So I love what you said because it is a process. You know, we have to be intentional. This is something that I feel has changed in my life is what is my intention? What do I want to get out of this? A lot of times we just get even on autopilot with someone saying this is a trending book, but we don't even know what is our reason for getting the book. Is it because everybody else is reading it? Is it really helping us solve our own problem or whatever? So I love that you shared that. That was awesome. So, what is the best way for the audience to get a hold of you?
Uh, so feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I keep hitting this. I talk with my hands a lot, right? Um, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. And you can message me anytime, or you can send me an email. So my email is laura@thinkmindtap.com.
Love that. And then what final thoughts? I mean, again, I love this conversation. I could go on for hours, and it's so funny because my kids, I get into these conversations and they're like, "Are we done yet?" You know what I mean? So I know how some people are like, "Okay, she's all excited. I'm not curious. Okay, I must not be curious enough." But so what final thoughts would you love to share with us today?
I mean, just the big message that I love to share with people is the fact that you have the potential to make a difference right from where you are. You There's a lot of ideas out there, but there aren't a lot of people bringing those ideas to life. There's a
Mhm.
lot of talk about, oh, leadership should. Oh, that person really needs to. Oh, these politicians, they really should do this, right? They're putting
Mhm.
it on somebody else. But you have the power to actually bring these ideas to light. And even if you think you don't have the resources, you can be resourceful. And if you're resourceful, you will always find the right resources to make these things happen.
Love that. I mean, that was just excellent. So, thank you so much, Laura, for being here today. I have really enjoyed this conversation.
I've enjoyed it so much too, as well. And I get so much inspiration from you as well. So thank you so much for this.
Oh, you are so welcome. And we thank you guys for watching today. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments or simply reach out to Laura. She would love to continue the dialogue. But
I
uh,
would.
we just thank you guys so much for watching. And I hope you put some of these principles into practice because I think it's important for us not to just consume things, but we actually apply them in our everyday life. So we thank you guys so much again, and we will see you all on the next episode. Bye for now.